Composer Gloves here, and this is the 44th video in the Kontakt from the Ground Up tutorial series. And today we're going to be talking about the phaser module in Kontakt. And this is just turning a lot of videos because there's just so many effects, and it's kind of nice breaking them up like this. So what a phaser is, and this is a typical phaser that you would typically run into. This is what they typically do, typically speaking, if we're talking about, the typical kind of phasers, the typical one. So if you were to take a signal and phase invert it against itself, it would cancel out. And I think I talked about this with the massive before, but let's talk about it with phaser. So, the typical kind of phaser, the typical one, if you have a signal that's going like this, if you were to do this, and this is, let's just say theoretically this is the other signal. If we were to have these two peaks at the same time and it was the exact same signal, because this is at positive amplitude one and this is at negative amplitude one, it would flatten out to 0, which would be no amplitude. So you wouldn't hear anything. And that is exactly what the principle of a phaser is. What a phaser does is it clones your signal, reintroduces it into your signal, but it phase inverts it. It's called an all-pass filter. And oh my gosh, when you do that, guess what? You get holes in your signal. And I've covered this in the harmless tutorial series. I've covered it in several other series. It's a very common thing, but for some reason the fruity phaser is like completely backwards. It's basically a resonance filter. But Image Line in their defense didn't make that one, and I personally really like it. I think it's a really cool option. Anyways, we're talking about this phaser. So this all pass filter will pass through a spectrum like so. It'll go down. This is the upper end 20 hertz, 20 kilohertz, and this is 20 regular, just 20 hertz. So 20,000, 20. So these are really high frequencies, and our filter will go down through them, right? So that's what the depth's referring to. And then once it reaches a certain point, it'll just pop back up there like magic, and it'll come down again and again. And some phasers, this one doesn't allow you to select how many of these holes you want. And in Harmer, or even Harmless, you can get like way crazy. Actually, I don't think so in Harmless. You can just create holes of specific kinds. Oh, Harmless has menus you could choose from, but Harmer allows you to just freaking draw your own shapes and do all sorts of black magic. But this one's a sort of limited one. But if we play a note, you can hear it already working because with it bypassed. That's what it sounds like. So I'm going to play some chords because it's much more obvious. And just look for the hole as we go through. So I turn it on. And if I turn the depth way up. Now, it's unfortunate that I cannot play. You can see here, some areas get lighter and not so light. It's unfortunate that I cannot. You know what? I forgot what I was going to say. So anyways, that's the depth, how far it can go through the frequencies. The speed's how fast. And the phase controls. The stereo, it's the same as all the other phase knobs in the previous ones. If you skip to this video, bummers for you, man. You're going to have to go watch an older one. And then we have our feedback. And you can totally see an effect on that. And the feedback is essentially taking that filter, the all pass, and it accentuates the dips and the highs. And then you have a wet dry like all the others. So to really quick explain what I just said in the most ambiguous way probably possible. Actually, it's pretty specific. But if I open up an EQ, and a phaser is essentially, nope. We go here. This is a band stop filter, so it's not a phaser technically. This is another way a phaser can do its job, is just create a hole in the spectrum. But this isn't technically a phaser. But anyways, a phaser moves through the spectrum, right? And it goes back to the top and moves again. But and you can actually control the width on this, which you cannot do also on here. Some phasers allow you to control the width. Whoops, which is another cool option. But the what am I talking about? The feedback. What the feedback lets you do is it basically puts like emphasis around your filter. So as it goes down, and these things follow it, it gets additional emphasis and sort of creates a resonance. And that's what the feedback does. And that is all there is to that. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Check out my music, opposinggloves.com. Remember, this is the typical phaser, the typical kind. So if you're wearing like a typical kind of hat right now, you should probably subscribe. It's just a feeling. That's typically what you do if you're wearing a hat while you watch this video, typically. And have a blessed day.